Welcome to a new episode from English Podcast, and our today vocabulary builder is going to be about the art of speaking out. So without further ado, let's jump to our story about the art of speaking out.
In the period between the American Revolution and the Civil War, Americans, literate and unschooled alike, were fascinated with public speaking. People from all walks of life eagerly attended debates and lectures on the political and social issues of the day. Great speakers like Daniel Webster and Edward Everett engaged the passions of enthusiastic audiences, captivating listeners with their rhythmic and repetitive speech patterns. The style of oration during that era was both personal and interactive. Prominent minister Henry Ward Beecher ignored his notes and spoke from the heart, as did the suffragist Lucretia Mott. Henry Clay stood close to his audience, while the abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison encouraged audience involvement. The best-known debates of the period were probably the 7 animated encounters between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas. At the time, Lincoln was not known outside of Illinois, while Douglas was a national political figure. Their debates drew thousands of listeners who regularly interrupted the speakers with cheers, groans, and questions. Such audience participation proved to be a key ingredient of the debates, as reporters recorded everything said, including audience reactions and remarks. In the fashion of the time, the Lincoln-Douglas debates followed a preset format. One man spoke first for an hour, attacking his opponent, who often seethed with anger while awaiting his turn. The second responded for an hour and a half, both defending himself and returning the fire. Then the first spoke again for another hour. The audience hung on every word as the two speakers applied their best arguments, for the stakes were enormous, no less than the future of slavery in the United States and the preservation of the Union.
So that was our story about the art of speaking out and some of the most famous public speakers in the history of the United States. But now let's move on to talk about 5 words that we have from the story. I will start with the very first word, literate. We said Americans, literate and unschooled alike. Literate and unschooled alike. So we're talking about 2 different things, actually, 2 opposite things. So if literate is the opposite of unschooled, it should mean the people who went to school, or at least the people who are able to read and write. And that is right. Literate is an adjective, and it means someone who is able to read and write. But it's not always just about the ability of reading and writing. If you describe someone as literate, you mean that they are intelligent and well-educated, especially about literature and the arts. And you can also use the word in particular subjects, especially one that many people do not know anything about. You can say someone is financially literate. So not everybody knows everything about finance, but this person is financially literate. He knows his stuff when it comes to this particular subject. And by the way, literate is spelled L-I-T-E-R-A-T-E, literate. And now let's move to our next word, oration. O-R-A-T-I-O-N, oration. Now, in the story we said the style of oration during that era was both personal and interactive. So we're talking about public speaking. We're talking about a formal speech made in public. It's not just any kind of public speaking. It is a formal speech that is made in public. Oration. And obviously this word is formal, so we don't usually use it in everyday language, but we definitely use it when we want to use the formal version of public speaking or just a speech. And now for our next word, and that is animated. Animated is spelled A-N-I-M-A-T-E-D. A-N-I-M-A-T-E-D, animated. Now let's see how we used it in our story. We said the best-known debates of the period were probably the 7 animated encounters between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas. So, what are we talking about? First of all, it's obvious that we used animated as an adjective. We said animated encounters. Now here, what are we talking about? These were not boring debates. These were the famous debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas. They were animated. So when we talk about an animated person or someone who is having an animated conversation, we're talking about something lively and showing a lot of feelings. So here we're talking about lively encounters. It's definitely not dull. It's lively, spirited, exciting. That is the meaning of animated. And now let's move to our next word, ingredient. Ingredient is spelled I-N-G-R-E-D-I-E-N-T. Now let's see how we used it in the story. We said such audience participation proved to be a key ingredient of the debates. So, what does ingredient mean? You might have heard this word a lot when it comes to cooking. When you want to cook something, you need ingredients. You need eggs, flour, milk, etc. These are the ingredients of making a dish, whatever that dish is. And the better the ingredients, the better the dish. So here, we're talking about ingredients again, but we're not saying ingredient of a dish. We're talking about ingredient of the debates. So what do we mean by ingredient here? Is it the same? Well, actually it is. Ingredients are the things that are used to make something, especially all the different foods you use when you are cooking a particular dish. But it is not about that only. Ingredient as well can be used for a situation. We can say an ingredient of a situation. And an ingredient of a situation is one of the essential parts of it. So a key ingredient of the debates, we already said key, which is important. So we're talking about an essential part of the debates. And now we'll move to our last word for today, and that is seethe. Seethe is spelled S-E-E-T-H-E. Seethe. Now in our story we said, one man spoke first for an hour attacking his opponent, who often seethed with anger while awaiting his turn. So, seethed with anger. When you are seething, you are very angry about something but do not express your feelings about it. It's like you're boiling from the inside, which we can use, obviously, seethe as well can mean boiling. But here, we're not talking about boiling water. We're talking about a man or a person who is boiling from the inside, feeling angry, but you don't want to show that. And if you say that a place is seething with people or things, you are emphasizing that it is very full of them and that they are all moving about. But our word here, in the context we had, it simply means you are very angry about something but do not express your feelings about it. And we used it obviously as a verb. So these were our words for today. I hope you found them useful. And I hope you like the story we chose for you for this episode. This is your host, Danny. Thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.